LinkedIn, and Twitch, I believe, at the moment.
Twitch.
So Twitch is it's more of like a gaming streaming platform, but all the young people are into it. Much younger than me, but it costs no money or effort to get us on there as well. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So feeling comfortable?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, well then let's begin. Welcome back to the Coaches to the Moon podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very, very blessed today to have our second Floridian guest in a couple of weeks. Kathy Houston is here at 5 a.m. her time. She's a certified life coach. She's specializing in health and wellness and relationships for women. She's currently helping mature women deal with stress, anxiety, unhappy relationships, and a whole bunch of other things connected to that. Kathy, all the way from Tampa, Florida, thank you so much for being here today.
Great, Alex. Thank you for having me. Thank you for staying up a little later in your evening to do your podcast, your time. It's an honor to be here. I'm happy to meet you, and let's get started.
100%. I'm not actually staying up that late. It's 9 minutes past 7 p.m., but I'm working later. I'm making more of an effort these days to condense my work hours a little bit, just because we work on the phone and on the laptop. It's so easy for the lines to blur between work and life, right? Yeah. Especially when you work from home. So I'm trying to, set those clear boundaries now that I have my daughters and, give my family that presence, but always really, really happy to have a guest like yourself. So 5 a.m., you mentioned you're a 4:30 in the morning riser. This wasn't on the agenda for the chat, but what do you do at 4:30 in the morning?
We get up early to go to work. I leave for work at 6, and my wife leaves for work at 6 as well. And so she's a school teacher, kindergarten teacher, and then I'm still working part-time in retail, which was my job for 30 years. So I'm still part-time at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Big name, big company. Yeah, great. I love, I love it when coaches and startup business owners stick with their day job while they do it. I don't know. How long have you been in the coaching space for?
I have been in the coaching space not even a year yet. I actually got my certification last October. I started my certification last May.
Amazing. Yeah. So I talk about a fair bit. One of the biggest mistakes I made, although obviously no regrets because everything leads you to where you are now, was quitting my jobs and doing that whole like Tony Robbins, burn the boats, let's just go all in, back against the wall kind of bullshit that just turns out to be very stressful and you don't operate very well under stress. So I'm really, really happy that as a sort of, relatively new coach, you're not just following whatever the internet tells you to do, because it's quite easy sometimes, right?
Yeah. I got, which is funny you mentioned that. I actually have a Tony Robbins coach for personal growth. And then I also wish I would have known this. I actually got a business coach just recently. And that's really the coach that I needed, was a business coach to work on all this marketing platforms, how to do all this website. The personal part of it, I've got the motivation, I've got the drive, I'm ready to go. I'm not overwhelmed, but I don't know how to navigate all this business stuff. So if anybody's out there listening, I highly recommend a business coach for when you start your business, and a business coach in your area. So I have a coach who coaches coaches on starting their business, and that has been very, very beneficial.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of them out there, and it's one of the reasons I started this podcast actually, is to get that tangible advice out there to coaches who are really, really great at what they do. They have an expertise or a craft or a passion to help people, and they can do that, but then creating the business out of it is the tougher bit. So I've got to address an elephant in the room, Kathy. I've famously said that the term life coach is very overused today by a bunch of people who really have no business handing out advice to anyone, but there's no barrier to entry to call yourself a life coach. I know that you've got a whole breadth of experience in your life. So I would just love to know, in your words, what does it mean to be a life coach?
It means to help people. Obviously, I've helped people in my 30 years of retail as a manager and a store manager in stores, growing and developing my staff, making a team, because you're nothing without your team, and especially in a store environment. So it naturally led itself into a life coach situation. I did go through a Coach Training Alliance certification program. Now, we're not licensed. There's no certification requirements. There's no governing body, nothing like that. Anybody can get a business card and put life coach on it. You're absolutely right. So then the client's perspective is, I need to find somebody that I trust. I need to find somebody that I connect with. I need to find somebody who has a program I'm interested in that suits my needs. So that's where the whole coaching business can get very muddy and very cloudy. But if the client can navigate it, and I do a good job with my websites, and I do a good job building my trust factor and my content, and I get some client testimonials, and then everything starts to build, then by word of mouth, referrals, all that stuff, you can become, a go-to person. It's been a long road so far, and it's going slowly. Of course, the building of the business is going very slowly, but that's okay. And that makes me better as I go. So I'm really looking forward to more clients and getting the testimonials, getting the referrals, really building that business. But like you said, anybody can slap life coach on the business card and call themselves whatever. So it's
yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a very, very funny industry because there's no barrier to entry. You can just say, this is what you do now. That's what I did, 7 years ago. I was like a health coach, suddenly had no concept of how to do it. I was just good at the one thing I did, which was like eating and cooking healthy, right? So I had no business doing that at the time. I've just kind of got myself here eventually through the years. But I like what you said about, kind of the truth will come out with how well you treat your clients. If you deliver a good result for your clients, then that's what's going to set you apart from all the other pseudo life coaches out there who really just, I'm sure a lot of them are fantastic, but a lot of them maybe are in it for the wrong reasons. And you never really know. So for yourself, you came into the life coaching journey after some huge transitions in your life, which was great. So you actually said that you provide a lot of coaching for the LGBTQ community. And we love to talk about kind of niche here on Coaches to the Moon podcast. And so what moved you into that niche in particular? And could you tell us a little more about the story leading up to helping this particular demographic?
Sure. I am called a late bloomer. So I am a late in life lesbian who discovered that her sexuality was not what she thought it was. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I thought I was happy. Sure. I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I've got 2 children, a home, a house, a husband, kids are going to college. Okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? No, not right. So, and here we go into a story of communicating with my husband, dating women, getting a girlfriend, meeting my life partner that I have now, who's wonderful, and actually separating from my husband, a divorce. Children are grown, so they're not at home. So that made it a lot easier, but still a very difficult transition for both myself, my husband, and my wife. She also left her husband and her 2 grown children. So that's called late bloomer. We call that late bloomer. And that's just being true to yourself after some reflection, some journey, a lot of communication, a lot of struggling with yourself inside and then outside with your partner, whoever you're dealing with, whoever you're leaving in that situation. So that's what attuned me to the LGBTQ side of the house, as I identify now as lesbian, she, her. But the journey is very difficult, and it can be difficult at any age. My journey was at age 55. So not easy, not done. You don't know anybody that's done that. It's even hard to find people online that have done that. So that I wanted to provide that extra outreach, that extra resource to been there, done that, been down that road, and help people transition through that at any time, in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s. And then, of course, the health and wellness that goes with that, the maintaining your life balance, working out, eating right, self-care, all that stuff that we've been talking about, mental health, that finally, thank goodness, finally, we're talking about it now, after COVID and the pandemic and still during COVID, is we're just stressed out and there's a lot going on. And add into that a problematic relationship at home, whether it's straight, gay, bi, trans, that's a lot. And so people need help and I'm here to help. And that really spoke to me as what I need to do.
Yeah, fantastic. It's really, really nice to see people make such a huge life shift that creates a positive change at 55, because I'm 31 and you start getting a bit nervous when the clock starts ticking over into the 30s, right? That, oh, I should probably have things sorted out right now. I should, look at my friend who's actually gone down the corporate route and he's actually, middle management, relatively cushy job now. Look at the car he bought, look at the kids my friends are having, that sort of thing. However, it gives a great message. It's just never too late to go and do something that's really important to you. So what would you say to anyone out there who knows they're not living the life that they want to and they need to pluck up a whole lot of courage to make that change?
It's not easy. And you're not alone. You don't have to go it alone. Take a partner, take a therapist, take a counselor, take a life coach. Use your friends as a resource. A lot of times your friends aren't that helpful because they've been involved in your life, but an objective outside person can help guide you through that process. And it is a process. It took 2 years to go through that process and be with my partner now and extricate myself and move and make the whole transition. And once you make the transition, you've got a whole other ball of wax, because as a married woman, my finances were completely tied to my husband. You've got a financial situation. You may have a house. You've got children. You've got custody. There may be a divorce. I mean, there's a lot to go through. You need a lawyer partner. You may need a CPA partner. You're going to need a lot of support going through that process. But again, it's never too late. That's the big message. It's never too late. And you have to be true to yourself. Once that weight is lifted, that burden has kind of starts to come off of you. It is amazing how you feel and how you didn't realize how unhappy you were.
Yeah, 100%. I think something we find out a lot in the coaching space is there's so much underlying negative emotions and feelings going on that just get not even crushed down consciously just by our to-do lists. You never get a second to think about, the things that are actually bubbling underneath the surface. And in the life coaching space, which sounds like your approach is pretty holistic, you'll work with every area of that person's life to help them through this journey. You mentioned health and wellness, mental health. You've got someone who's brand new, and this is going to be probably quite relatable to a lot of the coaches listening. If you have someone who's never dipped their toe into this personal development, life coaching world, what do you find is a great gateway to introduce them to this without overwhelming them with the process?
There's a couple of like worksheets that we can go through, some personal development type stuff of just questioning your life story. What is the story? Not just your conscious story, but the underlying story that's going on, all that stuff we've pushed down or we're not even conscious of. What do you believe? What do you think is true? Because anything you believe and anything you think is true, you will manifest. So what's the underlying story to get a hold of that, understand it, and say, okay, now what do I want to change? How do I want to change my story? And then in order for your brain to change, you have to put a new story in place. So that's a process. We call it the New Life Story. It's actually by Dr. Kruger. It's a story that I'm certified in to coach. It's actually a program from Mentor Path. I need to make sure I get that in there. So that story is what's driving you underneath. And then you have to recognize it, kind of work through it and say, what are some of my beliefs and how do I want to change those? And then what's the new story I want to create? What's my outcome? And then a game plan, action plan, goals to get there.
See, that's such good, tangible advice. You know, the fact that you can tell that you've gone through that certification and put the effort in to be good at your craft. And I really appreciate that, because I always end up ragging on the coaching industry, but there's just so many bad coaches out there who give the rest of us a bad name, right? Because they don't put in this effort. So how did you find the process of going through a coaching certification, and what do you think, what kind of confidence do you feel like that gives you in your business?
A great amount of confidence. I'm actually in the CTA, Coach Training Alliance training that I did. They taught you how to coach, obviously, how to ask those powerful questions. You know, we're not making suggestions. We're not giving advice. We're not therapists. We're not legal advisors. We're not accountants. Get that out of the way. And then they also gave some business advice on how to set up a business, how to start your website, do that kind of thing. Not nearly enough. And then the New Life Story part was an add-on that I did, an additional training that I did through Dr. Kruger and the Mentor Path Corporation in Houston, Texas, adds that extra layer of coaching, just to have a guide for me and a guide for the client. There's a client workbook. There's a manual for me to go through, and there's a client workbook for the client to go through to really work through what is happening, what's going on, and create that new life story that they want to create. And as a certified new life story coach, I'm able to take people through that process. It's called Roadmap. It's an acronym, ROADMAP. And you can find it online. You can find it on mentorpath.com. But it actually is a process. And so that is what drives the process. And I think that's what gives me the confidence to say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to work through it together. And it's a good outline, and we can go in and out of the outline. We can use what we need from the program, and we can apply it, and I can apply it to each individual client for what they need.
Systems and processes, right? This is the difference I see between coaches who are doing well sustainably and coaches who are just either never get started or make a few sales, make a big song and dance on Instagram, and then you never hear from them again a couple of years down the track. Systems and processes. I'm really, really happy to hear that. I'm going to throw a curveball at you now. What did you do? What did you do in the U.S. Army?
I was a transportation officer for 6 years. I graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point a long time ago, a year that will not be mentioned. And I was I was the 5th class of women to graduate. So that was a big deal, and a turning point in my life, so to speak. I was in the Army for 6 years until Desert Storm. I had my son in the Army, and I left to have my daughter outside of the Army due to having to go off to the first Desert Storm situation. And I would have left my husband and son at 3 years old, and my daughter would have been 4 weeks old as a newborn baby, and I would have been gone for probably a year. So yeah, that was a tough decision, and I made a tough decision for my family and to get out of the Army, and that's when I got into retail.
Sure thing. What was harder work, serving in the U.S. Army or starting a coaching business from scratch?
Goodness. Graduating from West Point was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's the military academy. Yeah.
Yeah. The United States Military Academy was the hardest thing in many good ways, bad ways. I formed a lot of friendships over the years. Luckily, my sisters and I keep in touch. And we've actually started our own reunions as just women who've graduated from West Point, because that's a unique experience, which we didn't understand at the time. And now that we're much older and much more mature, we can look back on that and say, wow, that really sucked. But it made us great people, and it made us a leadership, and we did a lot of other things. The Army is very structured and very set. So that wasn't that hard. But this coaching thing and starting your own business is crazy. There's so many different paths to go down. You don't know what you don't know. Like I said, I should have got a business coach 6 months ago. Where was I? What was I thinking? Why didn't I do this sooner? But all that aside, things happen for a reason. and you go through the process. But yeah, this entrepreneur thing is hard. It's a big deal. Yes.
Yeah, it can get messy. It can get well, and that's the thing. The army, like we were talking about systems and processes. The army's been around forever. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a training system. They have a planning system. They know what to do next. Entrepreneurship, especially the coaching space, it's only 20 years old. The coaching space, it's a minefield, and there's so many gurus out there and slimy internet people like me telling you what you should be doing to grow your business. You just never know. I'm fascinated by people who have gone through the military qualification process, though, because you said it made you better, stronger people. It sounds like that discipline and that really, really hard work must form a tremendous amount of resilience in your head. Do you think that work ethic carried through into the rest of your life?
Oh, absolutely. It was integral part in forming who I was as a person, as far as leadership goes, management skills, and getting a team to do something. When I came into the retail space, I had a very wonderful mentor who said to me, okay, this isn't the Army. So let's take it back a notch. Let's tone it down a little bit. On dealing with your cashiers on the front end. Let's not scare them. They're only 17 or 18 years old. So use your skills, use what you know, and just, let's take it down a notch. So I was very fortunate to have a mentor help me make that transition from military leadership to civilian leadership, and what that means as far as how to deal with people, how to talk to people. It is a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you respect everybody and take it down. And then even later on, dealing with the next generation of 18 and 19-year-olds, when I'm in my 50s, it was even another transition that I had to make of how do we talk to this generation, even after the millennials? How do we talk to the younger people and get our point across without coming across as offensive, abrasive? And it's you have to be adaptable. And that's what I learned.
That's a minefield these days, isn't it? Stepping around the young people, right? I'm old enough that I can say the young people now, because I think I'm in that millennials generation.
Yes.
Yeah. I came from hospitality. So I spent about 12 years in hospitality, working back of house as a chef and front of house, as a waiter, as a sommelier, as a bartender, as a barista, all this kind of thing. And you can't compare it to the military fully, but the level of camaraderie and closeness and long hours and stress and pressure often gets related to the military, because you also have your own language in there that doesn't translate very well over into the world. Lots more 4-letter words, and what happens in service stays in service, that sort of thing. Do you think that there were any skills from the military that have now passed over to become useful in your coaching business?
Yes, the ability to listen, to understand somebody's position, and to fully connect with them, to know where they're coming from. We did have to do that in the military. You'd have to be able to connect with your subordinates and understand where they were coming from. When I started as an officer, I graduated at 22, and I was in charge of people who were 30, 35, much older than me with a lot more experience. So how do you do that? Well, you have to let them lead you, and so to speak. And we were trained to let our NCOs, non-commissioned officers, kind of help us and teach us, and just be very attuned to what they were telling us, and because they knew what was going on with the soldiers better than we did. And officers were separated, obviously, from the individual soldiers. So we had to listen and make sure we knew what was going on and not assume. Again, a lot of diversity issues were still happening then. We're talking late 80s, early 90s. There's still a lot of diversity going on. There's still women joining the military. There's all these underlying things that were still happening. Obviously, being gay was not allowed at all at that time. It wasn't even don't say gay or don't be, don't ask, don't tell. It was way before that. It was when, there's no gayness allowed, period. We will kick you out, that kind of thing. So you really had to listen to what was going on and understand where they were coming from, and then adapt that to what you needed to get done as the officer, what you were in charge of for the military operations, so to speak.
Yeah. So that ability to listen is often something that gets overlooked a little bit in the coaching space, because we love to tell people what to do, right? But listen twice, speak once is what I've been taught in coaching people. In terms of taking that lesson of listening to the coaching space, how would one apply that when dealing with a client for the first time?
So you just, ask some open-ended questions, obviously kind of get the ball rolling. And then usually your client will tell you everything. And then you have to listen for what's not said. You have to listen to the tone of voice. Where do they get excited? When do they talk about something exciting? When do they get sad? When do they choke up? What are their pain points in that? And then ask, the follow-up question, ask another question to kind of draw out what they really are saying. Because if a client can probably talk in paragraphs, like we're doing now, we talk in paragraphs, but you don't want to necessarily get the whole paragraph. You want to get the bit of it. So you're listening for the real thing that's happening, the real pain point, the real process, the real challenge, and then drilling down into that with some powerful questions and some suggestions. We don't want to tell people what to do because they won't do it. They have to come up with the answer themselves or the ideas, and then they'll implement them because it was their idea. So that's critical.
A lot like when you're in charge of a much older person in the army, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You have to let them come up with it by themselves and then just make sure they implement it.
Yes. Fantastic. Oh, that's great. Let's do that. Oh, that was your idea. Good job.
Yeah, because the guard can go up pretty early on, can't it? If someone's not used to being coached, then the only discipline they've ever had, well, not discipline, the only kind of direction they've had is from a disciplinary source, like a parent or a teacher or a boss, then I'm a massive culprit of just not listening to anyone who tells me what to do. And it's been very detrimental and also beneficial in my life. But when the ball drops and you realize something works, that's very exciting. And it's hugely satisfying when you see that in the eyes of a client as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you see them, when you see the light bulb go on.
Yeah. The aha moment.
Yeah. The aha moment.
The aha moment of, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Their eyes light up, their voice changes, their voice picks up, they get excited. And then they start off on this path of, oh, I could do this and I can do that. And you're like, okay, right, good, let's do that. Okay, when are you going to do that? What day? What time? Let's hold you accountable now. And then in the next session, so when did you get that done? How did it work out? How did you feel about it? You didn't get that done? Let's talk about that, So yeah, the accountability piece after the aha moment is critical as well.
There's a lot of moving parts in a coaching business, right? It's not as straightforward and simple as some people may seem. So I'd love to get your kind of perspective as someone who's still learning the whole marketing and business side of it, because that's what I do. What sort of thing do you wish you knew more about in the terms of business, marketing, online promotion? And maybe I can, throw a couple of words your way to end the podcast.
Sure. When you connect on LinkedIn, all the connections that you get initially are from the other coaches, and mostly from other coaches who want to sell me stuff. No, I don't need that. So how do I make connections with my audience? And I just learned this very recently. I can actually search female managers or female directors in quotation marks, and all these people will come up in my second and third level connections, and I can send them a message and say, hey, do you want to connect? I'm so-and-so. This is what I do. I really like your post about blah, blah, or I really like this. So I just learned that. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I've got 200 connections, and 2/3 of them are other coaches, and 1/3 of those coaches want to sell me stuff. So not exactly optimal, and a big waste of time. So the that one tidbit of how to search for and make different connections, and the groups to connect to on LinkedIn, Facebook groups to try and connect to. Most of my connections in Facebook are West Point family, my fellow graduates, some friends and family here in Florida, and my sister is from West Point, and then my male classmates from West Point as well. So then how do I connect to other groups? How do I get to a different platform? Because obviously that's not the LGBT community that I'm looking for. So those really specific details, not just go on Facebook and make posts. Okay, you got to do content posts 3 times a week. Okay, I get that. But where? How? That's the business coach piece that I was missing.
Yeah, that's the age-old question, I suppose. Where do I find my ideal clients? It's right. I think the first step is really, really knowing as much as you possibly can about them, and I'm sure you do know an awful lot about these people. Then when you go on like LinkedIn, for example, you can't search for someone's, sexual orientation on LinkedIn. That most people, even if it's in their profile, is not searchable. So groups are a fantastic place to start, because people will have a certain amount of information, especially on their Facebook profile, where you can learn more about their personal life. And I would say for life coaching, in where your niche is more to do with personal attributes, then Facebook's going to be even a better place to find them. Because on LinkedIn, people are really there for their career, for their job, their professional side. Facebook, Instagram, it's their more personal side. So I would be saying, keep doing your content and everything, but get yourself into Facebook groups. Search, in the left-hand bar on Facebook, search like, LGBTQ Florida, or single women over 50, that kind of thing, whatever. Find these people and search them, select the groups tab, and then you're going to be shown a bunch of groups. Just join them all. And at the beginning of a coaching business, you got to go organic. You got to leverage time, not money. You don't want to be doing things like ads or paying to promote things, because you don't have the brand, the social proof, the credibility to back it up yet. So it's really the sweat equity, getting out there. And when you make content, make it in mind with, am I solving a problem for this person? Do they even know they have that problem right now? Are they aware of the problem? Once they're aware of the problem, are they looking for a solution? And then position yourself as that solution. So while you'll find a lot of coaches messaging you, trying to sell you stuff, which is just the most convoluted, annoying part of the coaching industry. Everyone just wants to sell to each other. Yeah. If you've got the actual stones to get out there and talk to some other people, provide some content for the great unwashed population who haven't been enlightened by coaching just yet. A lot of them will really be like, they've never seen it before. So a lot of people, if they see your positive content that is specifically made for LGBTQ women transitioning over 50, they'll be like, holy shit, I've never seen content made specifically for me. So as a coach, we don't need hundreds of clients. We need like 12 and we're good. Right. So get in the groups, engage a lot with people in there. This is where your time comes in, when you're on the bus or whatever, liking, commenting on other people's stuff, and then making sure you have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and consistency in your content. So when they do come back to your page, they're like, oh, Kathy Houston liked my thing. And they see you, they're like, oh, this is what she's all about. So it is a battle at the beginning, but like you said so well at the very beginning of this podcast, once you get those good client results and you get a couple testimonials, they will get more, and then it just compounds. And then before you know it, people come to you. So I know that was a long answer, Kathy, but basically, you got to get yourself out of that coaching space. And in the beauty of social media is how easy it is to connect with people. That's also its greatest flaw, is that people can just try and sell you shit all day. So when you're connecting with people, don't copy and paste the message to them. Don't open with a pitch. Like their stuff, comment on their posts, make them feel good, and they will come back to you eventually.
Great. Yes, thank you. And the Facebook groups, I have not explored that enough. That's a great idea. Thank you, Alex.
Hey, Kathy, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to see someone approaching a blossoming coaching business with some actual logic for once, which is great. And yeah, I mean, you've got, that experience from the military, from retail, from life. There's a lot of stuff in there that people will need to hear. So I'm sure this business is going to absolutely fly. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to hear.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. We've been talking for a bit. I know it's early in the morning. You got stuff to do today, but we're going to plug some links of yours in the videos we make from this podcast and in the Spotify and everything. So we'll have that all out in a couple of days' time. But, just before we go, thank you so much, Kathy. And yeah, I absolutely cannot wait to see what happens.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time, Alex, you taking your time and being able to be on your platform. Just one little thing I'd like to add at the end for any listeners, I'm obviously going to plug my website, runyourlife.biz, but for anybody who's listening, go to my website, click on my calendar, and I'm offering free mini sessions for anybody who listens to the podcast, who catches our clips, and just mention that. And I'll be happy to talk with you for just a few minutes or for an hour for free. So I want to get that in there.
Yeah, 100%. You know what? I stopped doing the plug at the end of the podcast, and a lot of guests pull me up on it, but I know that I very rarely make it to the end of a podcast. So we just put it in the links, we just plaster it everywhere. But we will get people to runyourlife.biz because yeah, I've been on your site. It's got some great info on there and very easy to make a booking for one of those free mini sessions. What a bloody opportunity for the people in the world who need what Kathy's got. Kathy Houston, all the way from Florida. Thank you so much for being on Coaches to the Moon today. It's been an absolute joy. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Alex. Appreciate it.
Anyone listening live, if you're here or listening to the recording or watching, we appreciate you so much. I'll be back on Thursday with another episode of Coaches to the Moon podcast. Until then,